Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Here we are on Modern Longevitarian. My name is Scott Stanfield, and the working title of the show has always been "It's My Friday," and that dates back to my restaurant world. And I'm so excited about today's show. We're actually supposed to be on last weekend. We moved the show to Monday, but Emily Fitz Randolph is going to be on. We're going to talk about transcendental meditation and some Ayurvedic stuff as well. So I'm super excited about that because I had her on my restaurant general manager podcast, episode 10, and it is still to this day one of the most listened to podcasts that I've had, and continually people listen to this day in and day out every week, even though this is not a podcast that I promote that often. I don't put hardly any new things out for that because this is my COVID pivot to Modern Longevitarian. And you can find more at strongerforlonger.com and all the shows that we have had here. And this is episode number 48 of the live stream shows that we're doing are all going to be populated. So if you're looking for a past show of a live guest, just go to strongforlonger.com and they're all going to be populated inside of there. One of the latest ones we put up is when I interviewed Captain David Marquez, retired nuclear Navy sub captain who wrote the book Turn the Ship Around. That's one of the ones at the top right now. There's also other things on the website like keto baked brie. If you're looking for the holidays, it pairs really good with champagne and raspberries. That was back in my restaurant days when I put that recipe together, and I've been keto for a long time. So I also want to say we're putting together a new group for group coaching that is for the new year. And I know that we're all looking to reset a lot of times in the new year. We need to wash COVID off of us, so to speak. And you may have that 19 extra pounds that you've had from COVID and being at home and eating those extra bags of chips or those type of things. But no matter what you need to do in terms of your longevity, your health span, or just to lose a couple pounds, we're going to put together a group, and it's coming together, a new group for the first of the year. So DM me on whatever platform you're on. If you see this later, go to my website, click on contact me or my coaching page and send the contact form and reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you and set up a discovery call about being in this new group that's coming together. So I could talk all day long, but I just want to say thank you to the people on Spirituality Gone Wild. Thank you to people watching here on LinkedIn. And I just want to say this is going to be an amazing show. So let's go ahead and bring on Emily here, and let's do a couple clicks here and get her on. And Emily Fitz Randolph, certified teacher, Transcendental Meditation, where I took my training in Santa Monica. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. So happy to be here. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. I know we've stayed in contact all the time. I left California, after I got furloughed at the end of March. I've done some Zoom meditations with the group there. I have it plugged in recently, but my practice has just hit on the 5th of December, 1 year since I took my training there.
So great. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. And you know what? When we did our first interview, I was still in I haven't completed 2 months. I was reviewing my notes from that. It was like the notes were, and it like something like on the 5th of next month, I'll hit 2 months, right? So the last time we did this was like 11 months ago, right? Or something like that. So
amazing. Yeah. And I'd love to hear about your experiences, since then, how things have changed with your practice and how you feel about it. We can get into that too.
Yeah. I'd be happy to talk about that, and I will say this. A year ago, considering everything, it feels like a lifetime ago. I mean, it feels like forever. I mean, it's like I can't even hardly remember like walking in and taking
just when we could all be together and do things normally and interact in social situations. It does. It feels like a whole other world.
It does for sure. So I love this quote, and I know that Transcendental Meditation has got a lot of mileage out of this from Hugh Jackman, and I just want to set this up. Because he said, nothing has ever opened my eyes like Transcendental Meditation has. It makes me calm and happy, and it gives me peace and quiet in what's a pretty chaotic life, right? I'm from South Carolina. That P-U-R-D-Y, Purdy, came out. I don't know where that was, right? So tell me about the quote. I mean, tell me about, a little bit and then we'll get into how you got into, because I know you transitioned from like the financial world in Manhattan, over into now you're in Santa Monica. It's like a whole different world for you.
It's a whole different world. Yeah. So, I mean, first, I love that quote, and Hugh Jackman's great. You know, there's such an interesting thing with TM. Either you've heard of TM, maybe you've heard of it forever, or you've never heard of TM. I think there's a sort of a big, this gap, and sometimes people find it really mysterious. But there's a lot of really amazing people who are just so into this technique. And so I'm going to be really excited to talk a little bit about what it is and why does it sort of feel so magical to people. But, you know, bottom line, transcendental meditation is something so easy, so natural, so satisfying. You know, Hugh Jackman mentions this peace, this calm within. You know, this is something within each and every one of us, no matter how crazy, how busy our life is, no matter what's going on. We might think we can't do this, we can't get there. Who, me? I'm not calm inside. But the best part is it's in there, it's natural, and TM is an automatic technique of how to get there. So right. I'll get into all about how it works and what it is, but I love that quote. It really encapsulates what this process of this technique is.
Right. And for me, it was the same thing where I had heard of it because in my research on emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman had mentioned it, right? I'd seen videos, him talking about it. Then on comedians driving cars, drinking coffee, Jerry Seinfeld and Howard Stern talk about it, right? And then Ellen, you know, had talked about it. And then who was it? Bob, I can't remember his name. Bob was on her show. Yeah, he was on her show. He talked about it. I seen that video on YouTube. And then the Hugh Jackman quote really was the thing. And then I don't know, I happened to be on social media and I got hit with an ad from the Santa Monica Center to come to the intro, right? To come hear the intro. And I'm managing a restaurant, you know, a couple blocks down the road. And I fall asleep 3 times during the intro. So nobody needed it more than me. Right. You know,
and I remember that, Scott. I remember seeing you in the back there in that intro sleeping. And it's so funny, you know, we do intros a couple times a week and, you don't know, someone could be there and they could be falling asleep and you think, oh, they're not getting it. They're just, tuned out. But those are often the people who are like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to do this. So they just, check the intro. But right. I love it. I love that you're here a year later still doing it. It's so great.
Yeah. It's a game changer, really. We in a lot of ways. So here, let's we got one. Nicole says hello. So hi, Nicole. She's a regular listener to the show. So I hope you get a lot hearing Emily talk about transcendental meditation and then my practice and those things. So let's give let's give everybody a little bit of background on how you got into transcendental meditation because I think it's such a powerful story.
Sure. Yeah, so I have kind of a unique story with TM in that my parents learned this technique in the 70s. So they've been meditating a long time and they taught me to meditate when I was a kid. And this is actually really cool about TM. You can learn as young as 10, and there's even a child's technique you can learn at 4 or 5 years old. So I learned at 4 or 5 years old, and then I learned this technique at 10. So I grew up practicing this technique. It was sort of part of my life. My parents did it. So I recognize a very, very unique background. But then in my story, I, went off to college and was sort of wanting to run as far away as I could from anything that, meditation, all these things that maybe weren't, in that time, cool and normal. So I wasn't regular with the practice. I wasn't really doing it. And I got into recruiting. I worked in finance and recruiting and HR for many years and very intense jobs, long hours, very intense people, very high stress, not a lot of interest in going within or taking a step back and recalibrating. And during that time, I got stressed out and I felt anxious. I felt depressed. I felt all those things. And I thought, gosh, I wish there was this, easy, natural thing I could do to kind of get back to myself. And so I came back to the practice and I picked it right back up. It didn't matter that I hadn't been meditating regularly for a little while. I came right back into it. And it was like just a total overnight game changer. I started meditating in the morning, meditating in the afternoon. I'll talk about that in a minute. And it was like everything shifted. Suddenly I recognized, oh, wait, I have this inner reservoir of calm, of stability, of centeredness that I'm never going to find out there. And I could access it very easily and then go about my busy life, right? The beauty of TM is it's not a technique for, monks in the caves. It's for us. It's for busy, active people who want to be super productive in our lives, right? So you don't have to give up one to have the other. So I loved it about TM. So I got back into my practice and it became something that was just so fulfilling, much more fulfilling than what I was doing. And I figured, hey, if I could teach this, if I could devote my time, full time, to giving this to other people, that would be really, really satisfying. So now I teach full time and absolutely love it. And picked up my life, moved from New York to Santa Monica, sort of traded for some great weather. And now teaching, hundreds and hundreds of people, which is fantastic.
Right. And, you and I have actually talked about, because I was considering becoming a certified teacher for TM.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it may be something that comes in down the road, but it's not like you're taking a 6-week online course. I mean, this is something that takes 2 years. You got to spend 6 months in Thailand, potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal to be sitting in a chair and Denny is actually Goodman was my instructor and, and certified teacher and those things. And by the way, how is Denny doing? I haven't talked to him in a bit.
He's great. He's just teaching up a storm. He's fantastic. Yeah, Denny is amazing. He's, longtime TM teacher, my co-director at the center. He's an amazing wealth of knowledge, and he's been teaching this technique and practicing for 40 plus years. So yeah, you were in great hands with him. But it is a lengthy process to become a teacher. And, I think that's really important and really helpful. This is why this technique is not taught online or, from a book or watch a YouTube video. People try. I've had people come in and say, I tried to learn it on YouTube and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Because you need that teacher. You need someone to guide you to your correct experience. No one's going to tell you, okay, this is what you do. This is how you feel. It's going to be your experience. But it's so easy with this technique to kind of not do it correctly. So that's where a certified teacher comes in to really guide you and give you that intellectual understanding.
Right. And I'm a big, let me try to find this on Google or YouTube kind of person.
Right.
And when I started hearing about it, and, from all the people I mentioned earlier, Daniel Goleman, Seinfeld, and all those guys and people doing it. And I was like, I can't find anything, on YouTube, like a guided transcendental meditation video. Yeah. And I've seen a couple lately. And to be honest with you, I didn't watch them because I was like, I don't want to taint what I already have been taught,
Okay.
and it's, so here's the thing in the brochure. I know there's a lot, there's probably more scientific studies that back up transcendental meditation than any other type of meditation. Right.
Yep.
Right. And so
Yeah.
it says here, develop your brain, and it references a study in human psychology. So increase your use of brain reserves, be yourself, increase self-actualization, which is a reference to the Journal of Social Behavior and Personality. Think clearly, broad comprehension and ability to focus, reference to perpetual and motor skills, and then be less stressed, and reference in hypertension. So it actually reduces blood pressure by doing transcendental meditation twice a day. So there's also brain waves that carry over into your regular day and all that. I remember from our conversation before. So, I mean, if you had to tell, I mean, this is unscripted. But if you had to tell somebody one reason why they needed to do TM, what do you think you would tell them, and what kind of science maybe backs that up?
Yeah, I mean, I could really talk about this at length, but here's what I'll say in a nutshell. TM, it's right. It's the most heavily scientifically researched meditation out there, which is great, right? It's not just poetry. We're talking about, oh, it's so beautiful and you're going to have this experience. No, there's actual changes that take place physiologically in the brain, in the body, in our interactions with others. So, you ask, what's one reason to do it? The beauty of TM is that there's a constellation of benefits that we get. no matter why we come in. Maybe you come in because you're tired, you wish you could sleep better. Maybe you come in for high blood pressure, stress, any of the symptoms, any of these things that we're experiencing. TM addresses every single one. And it almost sounds, too good to be true. But the beauty is there is a huge amount of scientific research that's been published in peer-reviewed journals, top-tier journals, that looks at what's happening in the brain. So what I think the biggest benefit of TM out of all of these is what we're doing at a very fundamental level when we practice, and I'll talk about the technique in a minute, is we're settling down the entire physiology. We're giving the body this very, very profound level of rest. Often in our day, we're in that sort of fight or flight response. Our sympathetic nervous system is sort of upregulated and we're going about our day, whether or not we're aware of it or not, but we're operating from that level of maybe more adrenaline and cortisol is pumping. So TM is down regulating the sympathetic nervous system, and it starts up regulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for conservation and rest. So all that means is that during the practice of TM, the whole mind and body gets a very, very, very deep level, profound level of rest. And from that level, we start to release deep-rooted knots of stress, right? This isn't just stress relief, it's stress release. So we start to release anything that's blocking us. And then we come out in our day and we feel more clear, more creative, more rested, more alert, refreshed, energized. And the mind has had some very significant changes, right? So very specific brainwave activity is created and on and on. But the benefits that we get from just simply practicing 20 minutes twice a day and how easy it is, it's really immeasurable. So maybe I could just take a minute and say what sort of TM is overall, very, very briefly, for anyone watching. If you're sort of like, okay, great. Well, what is this technique?
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us what you can, right? Because it's a lot of it's kept in secret in a lot of ways, right?
That's right. Yeah. So when you learn TM, you'll learn the technique, you'll learn how to do it. But very simply, TM is a mental technique and it's practiced 15 to 20 minutes twice a day, sitting comfortably, eyes closed. And it's silent. We can do it anywhere. I always say this. I lived in New York. I would meditate on the subway. You can meditate at the beach. You can meditate in your car, not while you're driving. But really, do this technique anywhere. And it's that easy. We don't have to set up candles or get in a mindset or really have any beliefs or philosophy or anything at all. This is why, you hear people talk about it. Ellen, Howard Stern, Jerry Seinfeld. There's no way of being. We don't have to change our life. I teach people all the time who are skeptical. They don't do meditation, and it works because we're just allowing the mind and body to have this very simple automatic connection that allows us to settle down. So we practice a couple times a day, and the mind automatically will start to experience finer and finer levels of its own thinking process. And we can experience what we could call pure awareness or pure consciousness, which is simply that consciousness, that awareness without all the mental chatter, all the stuff. That's why it's pure consciousness. And it's a very beautiful experience. Now, Scott mentioned a really good point, right? There's that experience we have in TM, but it comes out into our activity. We're not doing this technique just so we can get this rest and then we feel good and now we're back. Oh, hey, life's crazy. No, we want to feel good all the time, right? So the research has shown, and we experience when we practice, that when we come out of meditation, we feel calmer, cooler, more rested, more energized, and free to focus on whatever we need to do.
Right. And I talk about in the podcast we did where I was just finishing up the training. I think I was day 3 or 4. I mean, I was maybe in the middle of the training, and I had a bartender on the way to work. And this is when I was a general manager of a restaurant across the street from the Santa Monica Pier. She called me about 15 minutes before she was supposed to be at work to tell me she was in a car accident. Her car was totaled. She wasn't. And I was like, well, you're telling me because you're the mid bartender? Nobody had even, because I had done the training early in the morning. Actually, I was still in training because I did the training that morning with Denny. And I got to work so early. It was before anybody else got to work. So I was like, just trying to get ahead on, things back in the office. And she's like, no, I'm the opener. And I was like, I looked at the clock. I'm like, wow, we opened in 15 minutes and there had been a bartender here. So it was a really big learning process to teach the servers and everybody to kind of look up and go, you got to let me know if there's no bartender. You got to like communicate this instead of just having your earbuds in and setting up your section and doing those type of things. And what I found myself doing was I was almost like this moat was built between me and my emotional response to this. It was so much I could feel and see this distance between so my emotional intelligence was all just in like 3 days or 4 days was like so much higher that my EQ score was so much higher than it would have been if it had been like the week prior to that. And so it was like easy for me to go, okay, let's get these people moving, and getting the bar set up. Let's move, redirect our people who are here, the energy to getting this set up so we can open on time. And then, somebody stepped in and said, hey, I'll bartend until you get somebody here. I started calling all the bartenders. There's people out of town. I'm in the valley. It's a big commute for me. I won't be there in time, and then, but the new bartender was like, oh yeah, I'm looking to pick up shifts. I'll be there in an hour. Right. And so we were able to like make all that work because of those type of things. And so it carried over into my day. And so I'm sure you've got thousands of stories about, that type of stuff. Right. So
it's such a good real world practical experience, Scott, because that's exactly right. That's you wanting to be more effective and impactful in your life, having this opportunity to do so and just doing it without anything blocking you, right? That's such exactly what we're going for when we practice TM.
Right. I'm a creative in a lot of ways. I got pigeonholed into being an analytical person, right? Because I'm really good at spreadsheets and that type of stuff. But I find that, that some very unique dots can connect themselves in when I'm meditating that would not even connect if I was just not meditating during that time. And I don't know if there's something that you can talk about, some connection between the conscious and the subconscious or transcending down, but if you can talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, that's exactly what we're doing. And I like to use this analogy. I think it's a good way to just sort of get a framework for what we're talking about here in the sort of abstract concepts. But we use this analogy of an ocean, right? If we think about an ocean, you look out, very busy at the surface. Maybe there's some tall waves, maybe a storm's going on. Now, if you look out at the ocean surface, you could think, well, the whole ocean is in upheaval, right? But we know that's not the case because you can dive underneath those waves and experience that the bottom of the ocean is very quiet, very calm, very still. You'd have no idea what's happening at the surface. Now, our mind is just like that ocean, right? And we spend 99% of our time up on the surface, right? That's where we're engaging with the world. We're making lists and plans and decisions, and we're always operating up here. But at the depth, it's that silence, stillness. We could call that pure consciousness, pure awareness, or the unified field, source of thought. Now, we've lost connection with that. Right? That's what we experience. We're kind of up here. We're not connected to that place. And what's blocking us? Well, stress, right? Obstacles, everything that's in the middle here, blocking us from that pure awareness, that already enlightened state. So TM is this little technique where we're essentially changing the direction of the thinking mind. So instead of the mind thinking out during TM, we're now flipping the switch and experiencing these finer and finer levels of our own thinking process. Transcendental literally means to go beyond. So we're starting to experience finer levels, and this happens very automatically. So now when we start to experience now, not just the articulated level of thought, but more abstract levels of thought, then we can experience this sort of fine feeling level of intuition, perception, until we experience pure awareness. So that whole transcending process is allowing not only the mind to settle down, but now the body to settle down. So we get this very, very deep level of rest. And that's what's happening on a physiological level. Now, you asked about, creativity and what's happening. Well, there's been a lot of studies on what's happening when this process happens. And I mentioned this in the podcast, but I'll just give a quick little overview of this brainwave activity. All different meditations can be useful, and they all have different mechanisms of getting us to some place. And I can give you an overview of those too, but they all use different processes. TM, the process is called automatic self-transcending. So we're not focusing, we're not concentrating, we're not playing around in the surface of the ocean or underneath the surface of the ocean. We're not playing around there. We're allowing the mind to transcend all that. And when that happens, they've done amazing studies on what's going on in the brain. And they've seen that when the mind is awake and alert, right? We're not sleeping in TM, we're still awake. Yet with this transcending experience, it's settled down and become quite coherent, and the body is experiencing this level of rest. There's a specific brainwave that's produced, which is called alpha 1. And this is very unique brainwave. It happens only in the state of activity and rest. And if you looked at brain scans, you can see that suddenly all of the regions of the brain, which before were sort of operating independently, start to operate in concert. Things become harmonized, and the actual brain waves themselves become operating in these pairs. So all of this is called EEG coherence, total brain coherence. And so why is this interesting? Well, it's very unique to TM for one thing. It doesn't happen like this in other meditations. And it allows the body this deep rest. And then when we come out, they've done studies on intelligence growth rate, creativity, better moral reasoning, higher IQ, better reflexes, that suddenly, because we're not blocked by all that stuff, which was there, we've released it, that coherence remains. So now outside of meditation, you're still seeing, if you kept the EEG cap on, those coherent brain waves. And you're experiencing, like your experience, Scott, just this ability to act, to do, to think clearly, to get whatever it is done. So it's quite profound. And I love that you mentioned it. You experienced that within just a couple days. This is not like we're going to train for 6 years and then we're going to get there maybe one day, tip of the iceberg. We'll get that. Oh, I finally get what I'm doing. This happens right away. So I love all the brain studies. And again, if you guys are interested, if you go to tm.org/research, there's a lot of research studies there that you can look at about the brain and other areas too.
Right. It's like the sunny California, the sun's shifting and shining in your face a little bit. We got a couple of comments in. One is from John Jensen. Hi, Emily. I've read about TM and I can appreciate the health benefits. Thank you for the information. And then he goes on to say, he says, I've been doing Joe Dispenza's meditation for a couple of years now. I would definitely check out the TM intro. There's a TM center nearby. So
beautiful.
Yeah. I quote Dispenza a lot. I respect his work and all the things he's done. I mean, you are the placebo, all the things, becoming superhuman, and bringing light to, what happens with the brain and when we focus on those things. And so, but I will tell you that, combining, what he's talking about there with TM has been a total game changer for me. So I'm glad to hear you're going to check it out, John. I think it's going to be great for you. And then we've got a comment in from Bennett Carr. Hi, Scott. Looking forward to some new insight. So your new insight, Bennett's going to come from Emily because she's the master at this stuff. So I've been practicing since she's 4 or 5 years old. And then Nicole made a comment, so wonderful and thanks. So we got those from Nicole.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, there's so much. And even, when one of the things too, and I don't know if we talked about this before in the podcast or not, but Jerry Seinfeld talked about how when he was filming the show, and I don't know if you know this story or not, but he actually would skip lunch and go meditate during lunch and then eat while they were doing, editing and that type of stuff. And like after, so he would eat in the meetings afterwards and do this. And he was only meditating once a day because he said it didn't make sense to me to wake up in the morning and then act like I was asleep again. Right. And then in his 60s, after he'd been practicing this for decades, he started meditating twice a day. And he said it took him to a whole new level. And, initially as a restaurant manager, it was hard. It was, I couldn't wrap my head around, hey, I need to do it so I did in the morning easily. But then when would I do it in the afternoon while I was at work and so I was doing it at home when I got there late. So it was a lot of space between there. But just recently, I guess I've had the same epiphany that Seinfeld did. And I just started doing it mid-afternoon last week. And again, it's just another whole level of stuff. So I think that I said all that to ask this question is, this was not a traditional technique. It was actually developed kind of for the Western world, right, by the founder of this. So if you could talk about, what he did to create this for people who live our Western world.
Yeah. So it's a great question. And yeah, that's a great story about Jerry Seinfeld, right? And just think about how, I love he's been doing it, I think, 40 something years, and he's still doing it today. This is something that once you start, it's like it becomes, like you just want to do it. It's like, something that feels so good. So yeah, TM, it's not a new thing. It's been around actually for 5,000 years. It comes from the ancient Vedic tradition. Now, Veda just means knowledge. It predates Hinduism and all these religions, but it does come from a tradition in India. And it was brought to the West by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And some people may have heard of him. He taught the Beatles very famously back in the 60s. But Maharishi was a monk in the Himalayas, and he was also a physicist. And he comes from this tradition of this meditation. But what Maharishi brilliantly did was he realized, this is not a meditation that needs to be kept in the caves. This is, like I said earlier, for us, for busy, active people. He called us the householder, right? So this meditation was brought out for busy people, for people with not a lot of time to sit and go away. And this is, again, the way that it works best, this technique, is when we do it for a little bit in the morning, we do it for a little bit in the afternoon, and in between, we live our life. We do all of the things that we want to do, and it makes that activity before and after meditation even more profound. I've talked to people, and they've said that experience that they had sort of similar to you, that they just started doing it, and within a couple days, they felt so much more productive in their afternoon because they'd done that 3 or 4 o'clock meditation. Instead of grabbing the coffee, they just did a little meditation, or instead of the nap, and now they're more productive. So this meditation, again, was brought out in the 50s, and now it's taught again by certified teachers. It's a great story. When Maharishi first landed in the US, he actually came to LA, and he started talking to these sort of reporters. This was in the 50s. People were like, what is this meditation? And they said, and he said, okay, I'm going to, teach everybody in the world. And they said, how are you going to do this, Maharishi? And he said, well, I'll multiply myself. And so that's what he did. He taught these teachers to teach in this very specific way. So when you learn TM, when you learned, Scott, you learned in the same way that this technique was taught for thousands of years in that very same tradition. So you're getting TM. You're not getting someone's idea. It's not my personality. I've taken things and I've added things, nothing at all. It's just completely clear, perfect, correct experience. So that instruction process is a whole beautiful part of it. And, I think John had mentioned on there that he's going to go check out an intro. That's the best way. That's sort of the first step to learn. Go to tm.org and find a TM center near you, and you can check out an intro lecture where they talk kind of what I'm saying now, and they talk about how you can learn and how you can sign up. But that's really the first step in learning this beautiful technique.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I don't even know what to say now. I'm like, this is the beauty of being live, right? We're swinging without a net, right? It's like, well, maybe this time to transition into what because I love TM. I'm a practitioner, and I know somebody actually said this. Rachel El-Nani, I had her on the show, one of my first live shows. And she said this because I was talking about TM on Instagram. She said, everybody that I know that does TM has a healthy addiction to it, right? And you do become addicted to it, right? Because if you fall away, I probably have missed my morning meditation less than 10 times in just over the year I've been doing it, right?
Yes.
And, it's for whatever reason, right? That's happened. So you got to think that, I've done, 355, 358, of those, and it's really an amazing process. And so you do get addicted to it, and it's such an amazing thing. So maybe my one question is that, do you know the impact that TM has on sleep? Because I'm a big proponent of sleep. So can you tell me a little bit about that? And then we'll transition into what you're learning now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sleep is one of the first things actually that people experience when they start learning TM, even in those first few days when you're learning, that sleep starts to improve. So I'll say 2 things about sleep. First is, I mentioned this, that, the actual rest that the body is getting during the practice of TM, 20 minutes, is so profound. They've done studies comparing it to sleep, and they've seen that in many cases, the rest we're getting during TM is deeper than deep sleep. And the reason that's happening is that, in sleep, there's no awareness, right? We are asleep. We're in a sleeping state of consciousness. There is no consciousness, no awareness. We're kind of out, tuned out. But in transcendental meditation, the body is so deeply rested, it's as if it's in deep sleep, and yet the mind is still aware, it's still alert. And so that's where we get that coherence. So because of that very unique state of consciousness, it's not sleeping, it's not waking, it's not dreaming, it's actually called transcendental consciousness. It's a unique physiological state. The body gets very, very deep rest. So TM isn't a replacement for sleep. You still need to sleep at night, but when we practice, we get this deep rest. And now, if you practice twice a day, you get 2 opportunities for the body to release some of that stuff. Often when we have trouble sleeping, it's either we have trouble falling asleep, we have trouble staying asleep, or we're simply not giving ourselves a chance to sleep. We're saying, well, I got to do this. I got too much to do. 4 hours is enough, whatever it is. So when we've now given our body 2 chances to release some of that stuff that's blocking us, then people find that they fall asleep much faster, the quality of sleep is much deeper, and they wake up feeling refreshed. And it's all because now the body during sleep doesn't have to spend so much effort getting rid of all the stress, doing all the natural, normal processing it's supposed to. It can just do its job getting rid of that, body typical stress. It doesn't have to also work on those other layers of psychological stress, right? So TM is very clearly getting rid of that kind of psychological, physical stress that's blocking us.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. What I love is the analogy where we talk about you have to plug your phone in twice a day, right? Mm-hmm. Where in the afternoon, as your phone's battery's getting low, you plug it in, and that's like doing your afternoon meditation. So, if you can talk about that for a second.
Totally. Yeah. And actually, Jerry Seinfeld, again, he's really famous for using this little analogy. He always says this story, you look at your phone, it's got that little red line, and, you plug it in, right? Now you plug it in, and while it's charging, you're good. Then you unplug it and you're liberated. Now you can use your phone and you're good. You're good to use your phone. And then by the end of the day, maybe it gets back down to that little red line, you plug it back in, and then you can use it. So TM, it's like this reset. We're recharging, we're replugging in, we're giving the body that energy. All this is doing is it's giving us huge resources of energy. Being energized is one of the side effects of TM, right? We're not going to become these like zenned out, checked out people. We're going to become more energized, more efficient, more effective because exactly like that. We've plugged ourselves in, we've recharged the batteries, so to speak. And not only is this an experience we have, but what happens when we practice TM, I mentioned that parasympathetic nervous system upregulating, well, we're also getting this flood of dopamine and serotonin and those sort of feel-good chemicals start to actually flood our system so that, again, we are happier inside, we feel more productive. So right. It's incredible when you really get into the research, what can happen with TM.
It is actually, and not even just the research, but the practice of it, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. And so the thing is that you can't do it too late at night because it'll give you a burst of energy and you won't be able to go to sleep. So yeah, it's an amazing process. So you're embarking on studying some Ayurvedic type things. So tell us about what you're doing now, and then we'll talk about that for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I'll say this, it's sort of interesting. So TM, no lifestyle changes, nothing. You don't have to do anything. David Lynch is a long time TM practitioner, and I'm pretty sure he still smokes and drinks tons of coffee all day, right? And loves TM. So you don't have to change your lifestyle, but what we do outside of our meditation practice impacts what we're doing, right? Just like now you start meditating and you get better sleep. Well, that better sleep is now making the meditations better. And maybe you're feeling like you're making a better choice, not reaching for that second slice of pizza. And maybe you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm good. You're not using these external things to satisfy the internal. So right. Ayurveda, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, people are familiar with it, but It's the most ancient system of preventative healthcare and medicine. And again, it comes from that same tradition of TM from Vedic tradition. So India, but again, predating India. So you can think about Ayurveda and Chinese medicine kind of all coming from that very, very ancient early roots. And Ayurveda literally just means science of life. And it's actually science of life and longevity. So that was really their goal, was not just giving us a healthy body for this period of time, but actually trying to give us immortality or longevity as much as possible. So the basics of Ayurveda is that it's universal and it's eternal. It's not relying on fads or trends or, diets. There's a lot of great, keto, paleo that people find a lot of success with today. But this is sort of older and more ancient and uses some of those principles. And then it's completely personalized. So if you're interested in, getting an Ayurvedic consultation, you can meet with a practitioner. They can take your pulse, and from that very subtle level, they can actually diagnose what's happening in the body, right? If you have health concerns or you're feeling run down, you can figure out, maybe there's some little issue that's going on within my physiology. And then there's some lifestyle and diet sort of changes you can make to shift things. And the whole idea is that we're just awakening and enlivening the body's own inner intelligence. So the body, is this incredible machine. It knows what to do. And, I know you're interested in biohacking and kind of figuring out how to get the best possible functioning of the human body. Well, that's what this is. It's just reminding the body, oh, right, I have the ability to do this, right? Like intermittent fasting, right? It's reminding the body, oh, I have all these reserves. I can burn this and get more energy and be more productive. So the way we often eat and live in the Western world today is sort of blocking us again from that inner intelligence that we have. So Ayurveda is a way of just unlocking it.
Mm. It's when it comes to biohacking, it's I'm not so. There was a time in my life I was into biohacking. What is the shortcut? What is that way of doing it? But I'm more into the long cut is the shortcut now, type thing, which is Ayurvedic in a way.
Yeah.
Am I keto? Yes, I'm keto. I love that, but I'm more focused on being metabolically flexible, where I can burn both fuels, right? So carbs and fats. You can get into ketosis by fasting and doing those type of things. So I'm not a proponent so much of taking all the shortcuts. I mean, I know it's a buzzword and a marketing thing and those type of things. But I love that Ayurvedic and what I do is really more about the same thing, very similar, this long-term thing. I think the reason that keto and paleo work so good for people is that it gives them a set of guidelines to follow. And we, in our world, because we are stressed, people aren't meditating, they aren't getting the sleep that they need, and they're eating high glycemic foods all the time. Their insulin's just jacked up, right?
Yeah.
And so they're not able to lose weight. And so what happens is that if you take away one of the 4 reasons why your insulin spiked, it allows you to able to lose weight. And if you combine that with intermittent fasting, if your insulin does get spiked for whatever reason, lack of sleep, you drink a soda, pizza, whatever, it gives it time, because it takes 13 hours for that to come down. And then that allows the switch to go the other way, where instead of your body saying store fat to burn fat and those type of things. But so where are you studying, or where are you learning about Ayurvedic?
Yeah, so I'm doing a master's program in it's Maharishi Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine at the Maharishi International University, and this is the only master's degree for Ayurveda right now in the country. There's lots of wonderful programs out now, but this is an actual master's degree. Maharishi, I mentioned him earlier. He's the founder of TM, and he also started bringing out knowledge about Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is all over India, but again, like so many things, it's like this giant game of telephone, right? We lose knowledge. Knowledge becomes partial. It's even, what's happened with meditation, where so many meditations are about focusing and concentrating and trying to, quiet the mind. And it's a hard struggle. So Maharishi's Ayurveda approach is to start with consciousness. Again, like I mentioned, it's to enliven the inner intelligence. And if we, like you said, people aren't meditating today, they're not eating right. Well, if you just do one thing, it's going to work, right? If you change your diet, you start working out, or, change your little piece of your routine, it's absolutely going to work. But if we don't address, again, consciousness, if we don't water the root of the tree, the fruit will die. So we need to focus on that root, on that fundamental level, which is consciousness. So Maharishi Ayurveda, where I'm studying, it incorporates meditation into it. So when I meet with a client to do a consultation, I give them the tool, if possible, or the inspiration to learn TM, so that they're now letting their own inner intelligence start to work. And then everything you incorporate on top of it, again, will be that much more grounded. You have that full scope. You're not operating from, partial blocked knowledge.
So what you're basically saying in our inner intelligence is that the answer to what may be ailing us is inside of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We tend to, and again, medicine today, incredibly important, right? These vaccines that are being produced and everyone that's focusing on, our health, sometimes there's a need. But what a lot of sort of modern medicine today does is it focuses on the symptoms, right? You go in, you have an earache or something, and the doctor says, oh, well, okay, this little thing, let me give you something for that earache. They don't look at the whole scope of the person. They don't look at the full individual. They just look at the little symptom. And often people are specialists, right? So they specialize in something they don't know about the other thing. So what Ayurveda does is it looks at the whole individual, and it says that, well, in order to shift this little thing that's going on in one area, we need to address the full person. And often it starts with, I don't know if you're familiar with all the microbiome research out there right now, but it starts with the digestion. It starts with our microbiome, because that's really controlling everything in our body. So really the key to health is first prevention. So taking all the measures so we don't get sick and we don't get into the disease stages, and then addressing our digestion. And it's really amazing, how many things can be helped just from shifting our diet a little bit, kind of getting us back to basics. So just like you said, the body knows how to fix the problem if we give it the tools to do so, if we kind of let it just do its thing.
Right. I do know a lot about microbiome and microbiota and things like that. You can't see, there's this book on my lower shelf down here. It's called Fiber Fueled. And it basically talks about, how is Dr. Will B, Dr. B, because he's got a really long last name. That's just one of the many things. And so I think that strength starts in our core and our health starts in our gut, and all of it works out from there. There's so many things, like our gut lining replaces itself every 3 days. It is the size of a tennis court and 1 cell thick. And if things are getting through that, you got to think of a tennis court. Things are getting through. It's the first line of defense for the outside world, right? Our sinuses are, right, if you're breathing through your nose or your mouth, but everything that we eat goes in, and that lining helps process that. And so our gut is super important. And that's, I think, refreshing, that understanding that that's really it. And, when, and you may, I don't know if I talked about this because we were on a different podcast and a different theme really, but the whole part about being a modern longevitarian started with both of my parents getting cancer at 55. My dad had prostate cancer. My mom had uterine cancer. Dad's a little bit older, so it was a couple years apart. And so the thing was for me is like, I can control what I put on and in my body is where I started. I was a fat vegetarian a couple of times. I was 40 pounds overweight. And so you're right. And in terms of like our food can make a big difference. And then what happened is that I started putting all these pieces together. I was going down this trail to basically, there wasn't even, the word health span didn't exist then. The only thing I knew is that I wanted to A, not be fat, and B, extend my prime years out for decades. So instead of getting cancer like my dad's dad did and passed away at 62, my dad got cancer at 55. He's 72 now. Mom turns 70 next year. And then like my dad's best friend's getting cancer too. Right. So, 2 others got, prostate cancer, another colon cancer, and they all passed away. And one was my uncle who, had married into the family. So my dad's brother-in-law. Right. And he was only 60 and a couple months old when he passed away. So he got diagnosed around the same age, but they didn't get it all when he passed away. And I knew there was one, I could see from an outside looking in, there was one thing that was the same, and it was lifestyle, right? And so that's where epigenetics comes in and those type of things, right? And so what happens is I started adding these things in. And when I started getting adult onset asthma, breathing exercises came in, right?
Yep.
When I'm living in the Rocky Mountains and I needed something to cope with being cold all the time, the Wim Hof method came in. Then all the benefits came in with that, right? Then you counter that with, what Dr. Rodna Patrick talks about with the Finnish style saunas and all the benefits of being in a sauna.
Yep.
And if you watch the documentaries of Wim Hof, he actually goes into a sauna to warm up after he's been cold all day long. So he does contrast therapy. If you actually pay attention to what's happening behind the scenes, right? He does both. And it's really, really cool. And so all these elements have come in to develop these 8 pillars of living as a modern longevitarian, because I knew diet alone wasn't it. And for me, transcendental meditation falls into the mindset piece of this. And mindset is first and the most important. And then sleep carries support. The pillar supports a lot of weight, right? And all the other pieces kind of come in after that, right?
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible way to look at it. It's complete, and that's what you're doing. It's so important. It's, if we do one little thing, again, it's going to be maybe have a benefit, but then we're going to notice other, it's like whack-a-mole. We fix one thing, another problem pops. So exactly, we have to address the whole thing. And I love those pillars that you have, what Ayurveda says. And again, sometimes I wish there was another word for Ayurveda, because people think, oh, it's this sort of Indian thing, way back, but it's like the most practical thing today. And a lot of, functional medicine is really pulling elements of Ayurveda, but they say it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat, it's how you eat, it's when you go to bed, it's when you wake up. And all of us have these different mind body types. So what works for you, doing Wim Hof is going to be really great for you. For someone else, that might actually disrupt their physiology because they can't, whatever it is. So it's all these universal principles, but very specific for the individual. But I love all those methods, like pulling from and just using. We have, as human beings, we have so many tools at our disposal. So it's like building up our toolkit of what we can use at any given time to just allow our body to really do the work. And, again, bringing it back to TM for a second, just compared to other meditation techniques, which again are super valuable. The thing that TM does is it's like allowing the body just to do the work for us. It's the one time in your day where you are off the hook. You don't have to try, you don't have to focus. And, we're just letting the mind and body work together. And that's where the real benefit comes. It's doing less and accomplishing more, which is really the goal for all of us in life.
Right. It is, right. And it's so important because, this is different than, the transcendental meditation is so much different than mindfulness. It's not mindfulness type thing. And you're actually not working where you're trying to push thoughts out of your mind, only focus on your breath and doing those type of things. And so it's not work. It's like effortless in a lot of ways. And it's just other than because we've trained our body to keep moving and our brain to keep thinking and doing all those things. It becomes where it's hard to sit still for an amount of time in the beginning, right? And I think that's the importance of having an instructor, because you're like the deepest meditations happen because somebody's there with you, right? I mean, there's this increase of like a convergence of the energy comes together, right? Absolutely. When you're with people and doing that, it's such an amazing process with that. So Go ahead.
I was just going to mention there's a lot of research on that when we meditate as a group, with 2 of us meditating together, it actually multiplies the effect that we are experiencing. We're the first beneficiary of our practice of TM, but it actually sort of radiates out. Not only the experience, you feel better, you feel happier, you feel nicer, someone else enjoys being around you, but quite literally when we're tapping into that unified field, that total coherence, total harmony, then it's like that law of physics, the field effect, it radiates out. So it does help doing it with someone else, especially when you're learning from a teacher, and then being part of group meditations, which we hold every day.
Right. And so I love where you're going because you're doing two things now. You've got you've got the meditation and now the Ayurvedic, which is an internal thing, which I've been saying because I've been intermittent fasting longer than most,
Nice.
almost 9 years now.
Wow.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah. I was 39, 40 pounds overweight, fat vegetarian. I was a food and beverage director at a hospital, and I did a well visit, found out I was my scale was off at home. I was expecting to be about 185 when I went, but I was actually 202. My ideal weight's around 165, 170, depends on how much muscle I have at the time. And I've been as low as 157, pretty thin at 150, 160 range. And one of the marketing people from the doctors that actually did gastric bypass surgery said that he's like, oh, Dr. Belknap said that weight loss is about 70% diet. And all I changed was my exercise. And I started doing P90X again because I lost 40 pounds 5 years prior doing P90X. But I didn't. So I was like, my diet's good. I'm a vegetarian. How bad can my diet be?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Somebody has gifted me this book called The Warrior Diet. And it basically explains what we call now OMAD, or the 24, where you intermittent fast for 20 hours or under eat for 20 hours and then overeat for 4 hours. And I lost 10 pounds in a month. I started doing intermittent fasting, and I lost 7 pounds in a week. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. Right.
Yeah, because you're just going along with your body's circadian rhythms, right? It makes complete sense. It's always been in there. The mechanism's there. That's awesome.
It was, right? And so the thing is that I'd never like eating breakfast. I'm a night person. I don't get up early in the morning. I'm not hungry in the morning. I've only had coffee today. I've done 15 minutes of meditation already, done some breathing exercises. I've done a cold shower, done all those things.
Yeah.
And standing here right now, and it's 11 o'clock for me in the morning, and I'm still not hungry. So it gave me permission, like Roger Bannister running the 4-minute mile, reading that book gave me permission to skip a couple meals or eat when I'm hungry and listen to my body.
Yeah.
Right. And there may be other people like my friend Bob, who's 78. He's keto and he intermittent fast, but he's a morning person. He eats breakfast. He eats at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he doesn't eat dinner for the most part.
Yeah.
Like rarely eats dinner unless he's got family or friends that are coming over or any of those type of things.
Yeah.
And he said, and so what happens is that's his body, his natural rhythms. That's what works for him.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's exactly what, that's what Ayurveda does, that I'm more similar to your friend. I like breakfast. I need to eat something, and I can, very easily not eat dinner or just have soup or have something really light. And so I wake up feeling much more refreshed. Now that is totally opposite than my lifestyle in New York, where everything, I ate the salad really quickly at my desk at lunch while I'm on the computer. And then I rushed and I got, huge dinner with friends, drinks and all of that late into the night. Now that, again, weight gain, stress, tired, anxious. So changing those little lifestyle things is very different, from kind of Western. But I think that a lot of people now are starting to recognize these things. Mm-hmm. And it's more and more and more we're realizing, the way we've been doing things, maybe hasn't been working. Again, maybe for some totally works, but knowing what works for you and just paying attention, getting that intuition going like you have. And that's amazing. You've been doing this for so long.
Thank you. And it's a blessing. And it's really the cornerstone to my pillar called fuel, because there's 5 F's in there in fuel, which is food, which is super important. And I'm a foodie too. On top of that, somebody just asked for a recipe, and I have made this, and I'm thinking I'm the only, I don't know if the only person, but one of the very few to actually put a recipe out for this keto brie en croûte, where I made like this keto bread, rolled it out, took double cream brie and wrapped it in there, and then baked it and did all those things. Right. And it's up, that recipe's up on my website. If anybody wants to go get it, just go to strongforlonger.com and search brie, and it'll come up. That's how I found it this morning, to send them the link. And the thing is that when you find what works for you, and back to what the 5 F's are, right? So food is one. I interviewed Farmer Lee Jones, and his food is 300 to 600% more nutrient dense than what you can buy in the grocery store, even organic is amazing. So food does matter, but the fasting matters, feasting matters, right? Because we can feast in a way, not like Thanksgiving, I'm going to go lay on the couch and take a nap because I ate too much, but knowing when our body is designed to fast and when our body is designed to eat, and then flexibility between burning carbs and burning fat. And then fiber is in there because fiber is the prebiotic that feeds the probiotic, type food, the mechanisms, the bacteria in us. And then that allows, if you feed the probiotics, the prebiotics, it creates a postbiotic, right? Which is, like short chain fatty acids and that type of stuff that has all these positive impacts on us. I think that's probably part of the problem that I struggle with being keto and eating a little too much animal protein. And I'm more plant-based now than I ever have been. I know I posted some things recently, because I was making some stuff, but yesterday, 100% plant-based. Minus the butter in my coffee, right? When I had a bulletproof coffee. And so 97% plant-based yesterday and the day before. And so it's like when you're looking at lifestyle and having 90% plant-based, right, or 99% plant-based, I mean, it's like it's an amazing process, and understanding how important eating plants is, to us.
It's incredibly important. Yeah. And, we have access to plants and beans and grains and all of these foods, which really fuel the body, give us tons of fiber, give us tons of protein. For some people, animal protein is going to be necessary. Maybe there's, they're not able to get enough from their food. But for a lot of people, we can get that if the fat vegetarian thing is very common, right? And you can very easily eat a lot of non-healthy foods or healthy foods and not really pay attention. I think it's a mix. It's knowing your body type. And, that again, if anyone is interested, if they're thinking, oh, Ayurveda, you can go find your own dosha, which it's called. You're either Vata, Pitta, Kapha, a combination of the three, and that sort of defines your mind body type and how you eat food, how you best process food. If you're someone who gains weight a little bit more easily, if you're someone who's more naturally thin, it'll give you some tips and tricks on how to kind of identify that. So you can just Google what's my dosha type. I think Banyan Botanicals has a really good tool for that. But just to give people that option, because again, there's so many really, and then you can say, oh, I'm a Pitta type, and actually keto diet is really, really good for me. Or, oh, I realize I'm Kapha, so I'm going to need a little bit more. I'm going to need a little bit less protein actually, because my body takes longer to process that, or whatever it is. So you can find that out for you. I love that.
Here's the thing, right? Is that what works for me doesn't work for my wife. Right. And so what happens is the people in your own household, because you have different genetics, a different microbiome, similar microbiome because you fed the same thing for a number of years, but my wife's sleep cycle is different than mine. What she likes to eat and what makes her feel good is different than what makes me feel good and what I like to eat. And so I get that it's cumbersome to make two different meals, but find something that's kind of in the middle that you can, like, for instance, if they make fish tacos, I turn that into a taco salad with all the same toppings that they have on the tacos. I then just get more lettuce and I could put some sour cream on there, and I have this keto, meal, right? I just leave out the taco shells. In that way it was in the beginning, but now you can buy, grain-free, low-carb taco shells too, right? Yep. And so that wasn't even an option when I started keto, which is 5 years ago. Next month will be 5 years ago. And so it's a really weird thing. So we need to wrap this up. We're just over an hour right now, and I really appreciate your time. But where can people find you online?
Yeah. So I'll first, just for TM, it says right under my name, tm.org is the best place. If you're looking to learn TM, you want to find a teacher near you, go there. And that's really going to be your first one-stop shop to talk about TM. Right now, I'm sort of building my platform and building my business as I'm getting into my Ayurveda and starting to consult. But you can find me on Instagram at Itihas Ayurveda, and that's ITAHAS AYURVEDA. So Itihas Ayurveda. And that's really going to be a good resource if you'd like to get in touch with me personally.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes or a comment in all of the 8 places that this this video has been streamed to, and will live on all the platforms that we're on, which are Facebook, six different places on Facebook, LinkedIn, and then also on YouTube as well. And so I'll put that all in the show notes or on a comment, depending on if I have permissions to edit those show notes. I just want to say thank you so much, Emily, for coming on the show. We've done this twice, and both of them have been hugely impactful for me. And I love your work. I love what you're doing. And so thank you.
Thank you, Scott. It is such a pleasure. I love what you're doing. I think your platform and what you're building here and the folks you're engaging with is tremendous. And so I hope you just keep doing it, because people need to hear what you're putting out there. So thanks so much for letting me be part of it.
Thank you so much. I have 4 more shows this week, 3 more guests, one of them being Dr. Brownstein, who has written over 20 books. Was an MD, but also went over to being a functional doctor. And one of his books is Salt Your Way to Health. And another one is Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. And so I'm going to do a show on Wednesday about my process, my human guinea pig experience of taking large doses of, and I don't recommend this at home, I'm not a doctor, of Lugol's iodine for a year, the detox that I went through with that. And it's super amazing. But again, thank you so much for everything. And thanks for being on the show. I'm going to wrap it up right here, folks. We've gone long enough. My name is Scott Stanfield. I am a modern longevitarian. And if today is your Friday, have a great weekend. Cheers.